In the classic confrontations between Superman and Darkseid, two destructive energy sources have collided many times. Superman's heat vision and Darkseid's omega beams. In a fierce battle, both simultaneously released energy beams from their eyes. That time, Darkseid's omega beams overwhelmed the heat vision, proving their superior power. However, in another encounter, Superman's heat vision was enough to push back the omega beams, showing that these two energy sources can be on par with each other, even rivaling Darkseid's godlike power. The sky above Apokolips burned, not with the light of stars, but with blood red cracks where terrible energy streams intersected. Superman, the hero in the red cape, hovered in midair, his eyes glowing like two furnaces, preparing for a fateful battle. Facing him was Darkseid, the Lord of Apokolips, with eyes as red as hell, from which emanated the Omega Band, a divine weapon that could wipe out an entire civilization in an instant. The air was heavy, as if space itself were trembling before the power of these two entities. Superman clenched his fists, his hard muscles tensing under his blue cloak. He knew that every time he faced Darkseid, he was fighting not only for himself, but for billions of lives across the universe. Darkseid, with a cold smile, stood tall on a giant rock. His huge body seemed to be carved from volcanic rock, his eyes filled with arrogance. He said nothing, but his eyes seemed to declare, no one can stop him. Darkseid, Superman said, his voice deep but resonant. You have gone too far. Today, I will end it all. Darkseid laughed, the sound like thunder rumbling through the volcanoes of Apokolips. You, mortal, dare challenge me. My Omega Bands will erase your existence, Kal-El. Without further delay, Darkseid opened his eyes, and from his pupils, two crimson beams shot out, winding like energy snakes, shooting straight at Superman. The Omega Bands, the legendary weapon, not just energy, but carrying Darkseid's will, could pursue its target to the ends of the universe, piercing through all matter, destroying everything in its path. Superman did not flinch. His eyes glowed, and from there, heat vision exploded. Two crimson beams as bright as the sun, directly confronting the Omega Bands. The two energy sources collided in midair, creating a dazzling explosion, spreading white light, causing nearby parademon warriors to be blown away, disappearing in the light. The power of the explosion shook the entire planet. Volcanoes erupted violently, as if Apokolips itself was screaming at the clash of two titans. This time, the Omega Strips had the upper hand. They twisted, bypassing the heat vision, and headed straight for Superman. He dodged them, but the energy blast still swept across his left shoulder, leaving a scorch mark on his Kryptonian armor. Superman gritted his teeth, feeling the terrifying power of Darkseid, but he did not back down. After his first defeat, Superman retreated to Earth to prepare. He stood on top of a mountain in the Arctic, where sunlight filtered through the clouds, providing endless energy to his Kryptonian body. Superman closed his eyes, feeling each ray of energy from the sun seep into every cell, awakening the latent power within him. He remembered the previous encounters with Darkseid, the times when his heat vision was strong enough to repel the Omega Strips. He knew that his strength lay not only in his muscles or speed, but also in his indomitable will. Meanwhile, on Apokolips, Darkseid convened his war council. He sat on his throne of shiny black metal, his crimson eyes looking down at his trembling subordinates. Superman, he growled, he dares to defy me, but he does not understand that the Omega Band is more than energy. It is my will, absolute destruction. One of his subordinates, Darkseid, stepped forward, his voice trembling. Sir, Superman's heat vision can reach enormous proportions. We have documented him incinerating a spaceship dozens of times the size of Earth. If he uses that power... Darkseid raised his hand, silencing Darkseid. He may be powerful, but he is no god. I will crush him, and the Earth will kneel before me. The second battle took place in space, where a massive Darkseid ship was headed toward Earth. This ship, called the Destroyer, was larger than any planet in the solar system. It was a war machine, designed to destroy the entire galaxy. Superman, sensing the danger, charged into space, his red cape billowing in the weightless void. Darkseid stood on the deck of the ship, his red eyes looking down at Superman. You came to die, Kal-El, he said, his voice deep as an echo from the abyss. Superman did not respond. He focused all his power, his eyes glowing like two stars. The heat vision exploded, not as two small beams of light like before, but as a giant column of energy, so large that it covered a corner of space. The red light was like a solar storm, shooting straight at Darkseid. Darkseid responded with the Omega Band. The two crimson beams collided again, but this time Superman's heat vision was stronger than ever. It pushed back the Omega strips, causing them to disintegrate into space. Darkseid was shocked. For the first time in thousands of years, he felt a real threat. But Superman didn't stop. He focused all the energy from the sun into his eyes, releasing a massive beam of heat vision, so vast that it engulfed the destroyer. The red light consumed everything, from the giant cannons to the metal armor of the ship. In a matter of seconds, the war machine, dozens of times the size of Earth, disintegrated, turning into ash in space. Darkseid, though pushed back, stood firm. He roared, releasing one last wave of Omega strips. But this time, they couldn't reach Superman. His heat vision, like a holy fire, burned everything in its path, including the Omega strips. Darkseid, for the first time, was forced to retreat. Superman returns to Earth, learning that power is not just about energy or muscle, but also about the will to protect what he loves. Darkseid, despite his defeat, is still secretly preparing new plans in the darkness of Apokolips. Superman returns to Earth, but his mind cannot rest. The red glow of heat vision remains in his mind, a reminder that his power, great as it is, comes with a heavy burden. On the Fortress of Solitude, a lonely fortress in the Arctic ice, Superman stands before a giant screen displaying images of Apokolips. The wreckage of the destroyer still floats in space, like the remnants of a shattered dream of destruction. He touches the Kryptonian crystal that holds the memories of his father, Jor-El. A hologram appears, and Jor-El's deep voice echoes, "Kal-El, my son, your power lies not in destruction, but in protection. Remember, even in the deepest darkness, the light of hope will always find its way." Superman nodded, but there was still a lingering unease in his heart. Darkseid was not one to give up easily. He was the embodiment of destruction, a being who knew no permanent defeat. In Apokolips, Darkseid sat on his throne, his eyes glowing red like two hellfires. There was no anger, but instead an eerie silence. Before him, Darkseid, the evil scientist of Apokolips, was presenting a new plan. "Sir," Darkseid said, his voice trembling but full of ambition, "we have gathered data from the battle. Superman's heat vision is powerful, but it has its limits. If we can activate a power source more powerful than the Omega Band, we can." Darkseid raised his hand, cutting Darkseid off. "A more powerful power source?" he repeated, his voice deep and echoing from another dimension. "No, Darkseid. Power is not just about power. It is about fear. Superman does not fear me, and that is why he is dangerous. But I will make him fear. I will make the universe fear." He stood, his massive form blocking the crimson light of Apokolips' sky. "Prepare the anti-life machine," he ordered. "I will not just defeat Superman, I will destroy his will." Superman receives a distress signal from the Justice League. Batman, speaking in a cold but worried voice over the communicator, reports that a giant machine has appeared at the edge of the solar system. "It's unlike any technology we've ever seen," Batman says, "and it's headed toward Earth." "Clark, this is Darkseid's signal." Superman immediately dives into space, his speed creating white streaks of light in the cosmos. As he gets closer, he sees the machine Batman spoke of. It's no ordinary battleship. It's a massive structure, like a metallic planet, with sharp edges and a red glow emanating from its core. Energy currents curl around it, like the Omega Strip, but more powerful, as if they're drawing on the very essence of space itself. Superman paused, sensing a strange energy, not just a physical force, but something deeper, as if it were trying to penetrate his mind. "Anti-life," he whispered, recognizing the danger. The anti-life equation, Darkseid's ultimate weapon, had the power to strip all living beings of their free will, turning them into his slaves. Without hesitation, Superman fired his heat vision at the machine. The crimson beam cut through space, but this time, it was not strong enough to penetrate the machine's armor. A blast of energy rebounded, knocking Superman back. He tumbled through space, trying to regain his balance. From the center of the machine, a voice rang out, Darkseid's voice. "You think your heat vision is invincible, Kal-El? This is the power of anti-life. It destroys not just the body, but the soul. Superman gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing. He knew he couldn't let this machine get anywhere near Earth. He charged straight into the core of the machine, ignoring the energy feedback that was burning his body. Heat vision exploded on an unprecedented scale, like a solar flare. Vincent likely received everything, melting the metal armor. But the machine still worked, and from its core, a massive Omega band shot out, directly confronting heat vision. The two energies collided, creating a blinding explosion of light that shook the entire space. Superman could feel the power of anti-life trying to invade his mind, but his will, forged through thousands of battles, was not easily defeated. He screamed, pouring all his energy into heat vision. And this time, the crimson light overwhelmed the Omega band, piercing the core of the machine. The anti-life machine exploded, white light spreading, swallowing everything within a radius of thousands of miles. Superman, exhausted, floated in space. He is greeted as a hero. Under the brilliant sunset, Superman stands atop the Daily Planet building, overlooking the city he has sworn to protect. The sunlight shines on his red cape like a symbol of hope. Somewhere in the universe, Darkseid is preparing silently, but Superman is not afraid. He knows that as long as there is light, as long as there is hope, he will always stand. Under the red sunset of Metropolis, Superman stood silently on top of the Daily Planet building, his eyes fixed on the distant sky. Even though the anti-life machine had been destroyed, he could still feel a wave of unease, as if the universe was whispering a warning. Suddenly, a streak of light flashed across the sky, not a meteor but a powerful energy signal, carrying a frequency that only he could perceive. Superman frowned, his body tensed, ready for action. He shot into space, leaving a white trail of light behind him. As he approached the source of the signal, Superman discovered a strange structure floating in the void, millions of miles away from Earth. It was not a spaceship or a war machine, but a giant crystal emitting a red light, similar to the color of the Omega strip. The edges of the crystal were sharp, reflecting light like blades, and from the center, a pulse of energy pulsed, like the heartbeat of a living being. Superman approached cautiously, sensing the strange power of the crystal. It was no mere object, but a device that contained Darkseid's will. A voice rang out, not from space, but directly in his mind. Kal-El. Darkseid's deep voice echoed. You think you've won? The anti-life machine is only the first step. This crystal is the key to true destruction. Before Superman could react, the crystal exploded into thousands of pieces, each one a miniature stream of Omega strips, hurtling toward him. Superman unleashed his heat vision, two crimson beams cutting through space, colliding with the Omega strips. The blinding light erupted, like a storm of energy shaking nearby celestial bodies. But this time, the Omega strips were not simply repelled. They twisted, changed direction, and attacked from all sides, as if carrying Darkseid's living will. Superman gritted his teeth and focused his heat vision. The energy from his eyes exploded, so vast that it filled the space, burning hundreds of Omega strips in an instant. But the crystal continued to release more, like an endless source of energy. Superman realized that he could not win with sheer force. He charged straight into the center of the crystal, ignoring the Omega strips that cut into his body, leaving scorch marks on his Kryptonian armor. As he touched the crystal's core, Superman felt a power beyond anything he had ever encountered. It was not just energy, but a portion of Darkseid's consciousness, stored and amplified. He screamed, releasing heat vision on a massive scale, like a solar flare, incinerating the crystal's core. An explosion of white light spreads, obliterating all traces of the crystal. But Superman knows, this is just part of Darkseid's larger plan. Superman convenes the Justice League at the Watchtower, their space station. In the conference room, the lights from the screens illuminate the solemn faces of Batman, Wonder Woman, the Flash, Green Lantern, and the others. Superman recounts what he has encountered, his voice low but determined. Darkseid is not stopping. He is building something bigger than the anti-life machine. That crystal was just a test. Batman, his eyes sharp, taps the console, which displays a map of the galaxy. We have detected similar signals at 3 different points in the universe, he says. If Darkseid is creating a network of such devices, he could activate them simultaneously, creating a wave of anti-life across the universe. Wonder Woman grips her sword, her eyes blazing. We cannot let him succeed. If anti-life is activated, all living things will lose their free will. We must act now. Superman nodded, but there was still a question in his mind. Would his heat vision be enough to counter Darkseid's growing power? He remembered Jor-El's words, "True power lies in hope." But hope, however powerful, must be backed by action. The Justice League split into 3 teams, each heading to a signal point to destroy the remaining crystals. Superman led the team to the most dangerous area, where the signal was strongest. When they arrived, they were confronted by a massive army of parademons, led by Kalibak, son of Darkseid. The battle raged with roars and flashes of colliding energy. Superman confronts Kalibak head-on, while Wonder Woman and Green Lantern fight the parademons. Kalibak, with his immense strength, swings his giant hammer, creating shock waves that shake the space. But Superman, with his superior speed and strength, dodges and counters with his heat vision. The crimson beam cuts through space, melting Kalibak's hammer and knocking him back. In that decisive moment, Superman realized that strength alone could not destroy the crystal. He remembered Jor-El's words about will and hope. Instead of relying on heat vision alone, Superman focused his mind, connecting with the energy deep within the Kryptonian's body. He not only projected energy, but also infused it with his indomitable will, his belief in life and freedom. Heat vision exploded, not just a red beam of light, but a brilliant column of energy, carrying the light of hope. It pierced the crystal, disintegrating it from within. The light spread, obliterating the parademons and forcing Kalibak to retreat. But as the last crystal was destroyed, a portal opened, and from it Darkseid stepped out. He stood tall, his body carved from volcanic rock, his eyes glowing red like 2 hellfire furnaces. "You are strong, Kal-El," Darkseid said, his voice as deep as thunder, "but your power is no match for my will. Anti-life is the destiny of the universe." Superman, exhausted, stood tall, his red cape billowing in the air. "You are wrong, Darkseid," he replied, his voice firm. "Your will is to destroy, my will is to protect, and I will never yield." The final battle began. Darkseid unleashed his Omega beams, curling red beams of light that shot straight at Superman. He responded with his heat vision, not only massive in scale, but also imbued with the power of his will. The 2 energies collided, creating a dazzling explosion of light that shook the galaxy. This time, Superman's heat vision was overwhelming, pushing back the Omega beams and striking Darkseid directly. He roared, but for the first time, Superman saw a flicker of hesitation in Darkseid's eyes. Heat vision, like a divine fire, burned through his armor, forcing him back. With one final blow, Superman summoned all his strength, releasing a massive column of energy, engulfing Darkseid in a sea of light.